Test 1, 2, hello, hello. I hope that this is working for you. What's your name?
Test, test. Test, test. Nope, not on. Everybody, please find a seat. We're going to get started in 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, that was good. That was like, all right, we're done. You almost spoiled it, so what are we
Welcome, everyone. My name is Matt Hune. I'm one of the professors here in the engineering department, and I teach in the Energy, Environment, and Sustainability Engineering concentration and the Mechanical Engineering concentration. It's great to see you all here. I have the pleasure of opening the stage before President Boer comes up and gives a welcome. But for the moment, let me just say an announcement to the engineering students. Don't forget your what do they call them, salmon sheets. And you know the drill. Apparently, Professor Grunenboom says that you know the drill. And the deadlines for the end of this semester are located on Teams. All right, with that, I think we're ready to get started, and it's my pleasure to welcome President Boer to the stage.
All right, good afternoon. Oh, come on. Let me try. Thank you. All right. Okay, so I took one of these also. I'm going to try and get some extra credit. I've always wanted an engineering degree, so welcome to the final engineering seminar of this fall 2023 semester. As you know, I'm Wiebe Boer, president of Calvin University, but today I'm actually the client. Some of you may know that before I came to Calvin, I led a company called Shell, All On, which invests in off-grid renewable energy companies in Nigeria. So I have a deep appreciation of the role that renewable energy can play in both reducing carbon emissions and promoting economic growth. And I have a deep understanding that we all need to be more sustainable in our daily lives and in the work of the university. When I arrived at Calvin, I was pleased to see that we had signed the President's climate commitment and committed to reducing carbon emissions with the goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2057. But it struck me as odd that Calvin's target year for carbon neutrality was 7 years beyond Shell's corporate target of 2050. And 2057 is a long time away, especially given the climate emergency we now face. As Christians, we know we must care for God's creation, and we can certainly do better here than Shell, which is an oil company. But how much better, and how do we decide? I've had the pleasure of being the client for sustainability-related projects in Engineering 333 classes, both last fall and this one. In Engineering 333, Professor Hune has a long history of asking a one-sentence, sustainability-related question that takes the whole class the entire semester to answer. Examples include, what would it take to get Calvin off the grid? And last year, what would it take to eliminate Calvin's gas-related CO2 emissions? Engineering 333 seemed the perfect setting, therefore, to ask this year's question, what earlier year should Calvin University choose for its carbon neutrality date? Certainly Calvin can do it faster than a global oil company. So along with CFO Dirk Price, is Dirk here? He's not here, okay. VP of Advancement Greg Elzinga, because he's going to have to raise the money for this, as well as Trent DeBoer and Toby Dalla Santa of GMB Architects. We watched the students grapple with this important question throughout the semester. I've attended progress reports and have seen their understanding of the university and sustainability issues grow. And today I'm pleased to invite them to the stage to present the results of their good work. So please join me in welcoming the Engineering 333 selected presenters, Panache Makuvaro, Michael Lanning, Stuart Johnson, and David Harris.
Oh, you're here.
And before I hand over to them, I want to recognize the presence of President Harris from Kuiper College. So I assume you're here because of the Harris that's up here? Okay, all right, thank you for coming. Thanks for being here. All right, good luck, guys.
Thank you. All right, good, all right. Thank you for that very kind introduction, President Boer. It means a lot, your care and understanding about how much this means to us students. The Engineering 333 students put a lot of work, not only just people on stage, I want to make that clear, and we are very excited to show you what we've worked on all semester. Hope you guys enjoy. First, I want to start with two important pieces of context I think everybody in this room should know. And first is the global climate situation. In 2015, the Paris Accord set a goal of limiting global warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, why is 1.5 degrees Celsius significant? This number is significant because at 1.5 degrees Celsius, this is the point at which irreversible climate change will occur. And it's even more significant because the world right now is approaching that target very quickly. Now, how quickly? Scientists predict that this threshold will be reached by 2030 if we continue on the track that we are right now. And it's actually such a concern that as we speak right now, nations are gathered in the UAE to discuss how to get the world back on track to that 1.5 degrees Celsius goal that I just discussed. Now, what's that got to do with Kelvin? What's the global climate got to do with Kelvin? That is the second piece of context. How does Kelvin fit into the global climate situation? Picture it as then President Leroy providing a groundbreaking commitment to Kelvin in 2017. What did he do? He committed Kelvin to carbon neutrality. This was the first and only commitment that Kelvin has ever had and started more conversations and awareness towards climate change. This was a great step for Kelvin to move in the right directions towards being more sustainable. However, this was the date that was chosen, 2057. Then President Leroy wanted to give us 40 years to reach this sustainability date. Now, what's the issue with that? Well, I'm going to build a little timeline for you guys. First, in 2017, you have Leroy signing. And in 2023, you have today. And in 2030 is that irreversible point that I just talked about. Now, I'm going to stretch the timeline out for you a little bit more, for you a little bit. First, let's show Kelvin's targeted date for carbon neutrality. Off down yonder, okay? Now, that seems a little odd. We're going to reach carbon neutrality in 2057, but irreversible damages are going to come in 2030. So what are we, screwed? Well, let's slow down, just let's not get there yet. I have some good news for us. I want to show Shell, a gasoline and oil company. And anyone in the crowd, if you were paying attention to when President Bohr was speaking, what is Shell, a gas and oil company's targeted date for being carbon neutral? Anyone? Is anyone paying attention? 2050. That's correct. 2050, we got Shell up on there. So that starts the question. Can Kelvin do better than a gas and oil company on reaching sustainability? We want to move more towards that 2030 date. Now for the last piece of context. What do us four up on stage have to do with Kelvin's climate change and the global climate change? Well, all four of us are Engineering 333 students, and this class focuses on energy and energy system designs. Just like President Bohr said, every year for this class, Professor Hune assigns a topic for a semester-long project. This project includes a one-sentence question that students work all semester long to answer. A few examples of past projects that Engineering 333 students have done are as follows. Wind energy design, low-carbon housing, and last year's carbon-neutral heating. Now, that may make you ask, well, what is your guys' question this year? And with the past context that I have set, as well as Kelvin's carbon neutrality date, President Bohr suggested a question for the Engineering 333 students this year. And that question is, what earlier year should Kelvin University choose for its carbon neutrality date? President Bohr not only understands the need to move forward our current carbon neutrality date, but he tasked our class to find not only an earlier date that we can reach neutrality by, but a feasible date and a plan of action of how we can actually get there. Again, very clear, not just us four on stage have worked on this. There was a lot of work that was done. And on the left, you have Section A and Section B. We have two sections of Engineering 333, and all of us as a group worked to answer this question. First, each class was split into 4 groups. You have efficiency, heating, electricity, and finance, with a team leader being designated for each group. Then later in the semester, an administrative team was formed around those leaders that were in each group to focus on higher level organization and questions. Each one of us on stage were a team leader for a different group and a so-called expert on their field. I was heating, David was electricity, Panache was efficiency, and Micah was finance. This is significant because we're going to be shifting and rotating speakers a lot, and we want to make sure that the expert for the class is always talking about what they worked on. Because if I'm up here talking about finances, this presentation is going to go south very quickly. So, first off, without further ado, we have Panache, who will be speaking about Kelvin's carbon emissions and Kelvin's efficiency.
I'll stand off to the side here. I'm not as tall as my counterparts. So the first step to getting to carbon neutral is figuring out how much carbon Calvin is actually emitting. In 2022 alone, Calvin University emitted 77 million pounds of CO2. This is equivalent to the total weight of 192 blue Antarctic whales. So this is a lot of carbon. To get to zero, we need to figure out where is this carbon coming from so we can tackle this problem. Our biggest source is natural gas. We burn natural gas to heat the campus, and this amounts to about 57% of our total emissions. Our second source is electricity. Currently, Calvin gets all of its electricity from the grid, which has not entirely decarbonized. So as a result, we get 23% of our emissions from this. Our third source is travel. Anytime someone travels to represent Calvin University, there will be carbon emissions associated with this, and that amounts to 9% of our total carbon emission load. Our final source is a group of food emission waste, as well as solid waste and transmission losses, and this amounts to 11%. So now that we've looked at all the carbon, the real question is when then can we get to carbon neutral? We've already established that 2057 is a little too far away, and I feel like we can do better than 2050, and maybe even better than 2040. So what the Engineering 333 students have come up with is 2030 as our target date, which is even better because it's in alignment with the Paris Accord. So we've looked at the carbon associated with this and what we need to get to zero. And the next thing is looking at the projects associated with getting that to zero and how much it's going to cost. So throughout this presentation, I want you to keep an eye out for the carbon pie at the bottom as well as the cost donut at the top. Our first set of projects will be efficiency projects. These are implemented first because they have to do with what Calvin is already working with. We've suggested starting with smart thermostats, and these will be implemented in every academic building. This will require the installation of infrared sensors that will monitor the occupancy and activity level in each room. Thus, the temperature will be changed automatically to meet the needs of that room. The dorm equivalent of this will be thermostatic radiator valves. So manual radiator valves allow someone to adjust the amount of water you have flowing through your radiator. But this requires us having someone in the room to feel the change in the room, the temperature change, and then adjust. But with the TRVs, this is done automatically. We also have energy recovery ventilators. Essentially, this is a heat exchanger that draws air from inside the building as well as outside. And as these two air streams pass one another, a heat exchange occurs. And you have air flowing back into the buildings, pre-cooled in the summer and preheated during the wintertime. And what this does is it alleviates the load on your HVAC system. Our final efficiency suggestion is the implementation of smart power strips. What these will do is shut down the power to any idling devices, such as computers that are still on but no one's actually working on them. As a whole, the efficiency projects will reduce our carbon emissions by 6.7% and will cost an estimated $1.85 million. I will now hand over to Stuart Johnson again, and he'll walk us through the heating projects.
Long time no see. Well, before I dive into our proposed solution for making Calvin's heating load carbon neutral, I want to talk about what we have right now on campus and issues with our current heating load infrastructure. Right now on campus, we have 7 on-campus natural gas boilers. These boilers burn natural gas to heat either steam or water. Those streams then travel from boilers to buildings where the fluids are branched out to then heat the building. Now, what are the problems with this? Well, boilers are at the end of their lifespan. We've had some of these boilers since Calvin College started, so they are very, very old. And as these boilers age, they lose efficiency as time moves along. And actually, they're so bad right now that we actually already replaced some of the library boilers. So there's a very growing need to kind of get rid of these old boilers and move to something new. Also, the steam streams I just talked about are less efficient than water streams. They lose more energy when traveling from boilers to buildings. Therefore, that's just wasted money that we're throwing away. We could convert those to water instead of steam. Also, the last problem. Every single solution that Calvin has for their heating load right now produces carbon emissions. We have no renewable or sustainable methods to produce heat. So, what did we come up with as Engineering 333 students to replace these natural gas boilers? Well, we looked into geothermal ground source heat pumps. And I want to provide a little bit of context for you guys because I know not everyone in the audience knows what these are and how these work. So ground source heat pumps harness Earth's energy by pumping water deep into Earth where the temperatures are hotter. So right now in winter months, you have very cold temperatures above ground. But if you go down further into the Earth's crust, the temperatures are actually much hotter. So what you can do is use pipes that can pump water down into Earth's crust, then take that heat that the Earth is producing, bring it back up, and then shoot out those water streams into your buildings to then heat them. Now, you do this by using electricity. A massive amount of electricity has to be used to pump these waters and keep the cycle going. Now, also, who lived in the dorms with no AC? Raise your hand, please. You guys know how bad it is there as well. Well, good thing also, these geothermal heat pumps have a solution for you guys too. They can also cool buildings. So in the summer months when it's much hotter up above ground, the Earth's crust is actually cooler. So then the water flows down under Earth's crust to cool that water and then can be brought up to then heat or cool campus, providing you guys a little bit more comfortability in those hotter months. And if you guys still aren't convinced, the Department of Energy and EPA states that ground source heat pumps and geothermal are among the most energy efficient and environmentally friendly heating, cooling, and water heating systems available today. So this is a great technology that I think Calvin should be implementing. Now, how are we going to get geothermal on campus? Stay with me here. Surprise, newsflash, Commons is being redone, and plans are scheduled right now for 2024. And shown above in our figure right here is GMB Architecture and Engineering's current plans for renovations. And what did they do? They looked into geothermal. They're on the same page as the Engineering 333 students. So natural gas boilers would be replaced with geothermal heating that uses those ground source heat pumps that I've discussed. Now, the green on the map is where these boreholes will be placed that I just talked about. These boreholes are about 5 to 6 inches in diameter. You have to dig hundreds and hundreds of them to provide piping where the water will go and go down deep into the Earth's crust. So the green on the map is where those will be placed, Commons lawn and CFAX parking lot, and then in between is where the new Commons building will go. Now, how does this affect Calvin's sustainability? Well, as you can see in our pie chart, that reduces 28% of Calvin's total emissions that we have right now. Now, you guys are probably thinking this ain't cheap. This is going to be hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, if you take the costs that we're going to have to use to already buy our previously old infrastructure that's going to have to be replaced, those natural gas boilers are not going to last long. If you take that money and you put it towards geothermal, you actually only need about $5.7 million up front to purchase this, more than redoing the natural gas boilers. These these ground source heat pumps also have a great lifespan. You have a 25-year warranty for the ground source heat pumps and 75-year warranty for the boreholes. And again, like I said before, the heating emissions are going to come down, but electricity emissions are actually going to go up because we have to use so much electricity to power these. Also, maintenance goes down for these. We will spend less on maintenance using this new ground source heat pump and geothermal than we did previously with what we have right now because it's breaking down so often and a lot of parts and stuff is going to have to be replaced. This is phase 1 of geothermal. Phase 2 is going to be in 2026. And that's what we proposed where our second ground source heat pump implementation to happen. Now, where is this ground source heat pump going to be placed? We proposed Lot 8, as you guys all know. And the red target area is where over 200 boreholes will be placed, and the parking lot's going to have to be retoured. In total, this is going to reduce 20% of Calvin's carbon emissions and cost $3.7 million up front. That cost includes redoing the parking lot after tearing that up. And again, that is cost over replacing what we currently have right now. Maintenance lowers for this second loop as well. And that completes our Kelvin heating load carbon neutral initiative. I'm now going to hand it over to David, who's going to explain to you how we're going to get that pie chart filled all the way up. Because right now we're only at 50%. We got to get it full to get Kelvin to carbon neutral. Good luck, man.
So I'll be covering how we will complete the almost 50% carbon remaining. Our next proposed project will be installing a Kelvin on-site solar farm. And you may ask, where could we possibly have space for this? Well, as conveniently mentioned by Stuart, parking lot 8 will be torn up and is a prime spot to install solar covered parking, which means that all the students will have covered parking during the winter. The next implementation of this, which is phase 2, will be covering numerous academic and facility buildings. Both of these projects in combination will fulfill 38% of Kelvin's total electricity requirements. And this covers a further 9.3% of Kelvin's current carbon emissions. Which you may ask, this is a costly project. It is a costly project, with the initial cost of $9.9 million up front. While this project does also continue to make Kelvin money over time. This project brings our running costs up to $21.1 million. Next is a point of context. Kelvin's current energy provider is Consumers Energy, and Consumers Energy said in 2020 that they will strive for full grid decarbonization by 2040. This is a figure from their 2020 sustainability report, in which in 2020 their grid comprised of 11% renewable energy, and they are striving for 63% by 2040, with combination with efficiency improvements and energy storage that will make 90% grid decarbonization. The final 10%, which is currently natural gas, will be covered by carbon offsets. Due to Consumers Energy growing renewable energy amount, they offer a program that allows their consumers to buy directly 100% carbon neutral energy. This comes at a 13% increase in electricity rates and will account for 62% of Kelvin's remaining electricity. From 2024 till 2040, the 13% rate increase will account for $140,000 per year, which is on top of Kelvin's $2 million plus electricity bill. So far, the electricity green energy program will cover the remaining 15.2% of carbon, and this will almost fill our entire cost circle. From now, you will see that there is a remaining sliver of natural gas, transportation, and the other category. And you may ask, with the remaining cost sliver, how could we possibly cover this? Well, this is where carbon offsets come in. Carbon offsets are when an institution like Kelvin contracts out with other organizations or businesses to pay them to reduce their own current carbon or to create carbon negative projects. In return, Kelvin will be able to use these carbon credits to make them carbon neutral, which will fill the remaining 20.7% carbon, getting us to carbon neutral. And our total cost will come up to $22.5 million. At this point, we have given you what we are calling the initial cost. This has not yet included operations and maintenance, depreciation, or inflation. With these numbers, our total project projected cost will be $23.7 million. Now, I will be handing off to Michael Lanning, who will be covering our proposed funding sources.
Well, thank you, David, for the $23.7 million of unpaid costs. Anyone want the bill? Anyone got that for us? Oh, well then I might as well stop now. But just in case that falls through, we should probably keep going. Let's look into some other funding options. First, energy cost savings. Up until this point, we've been implementing a lot of projects for efficiency improvements and so on. Now, those all are saving us lots of money. And so much so that it's a total of $5.6 million from now until carbon neutrality. This brings us down to $18.1 million that we're going to actually have to fund. Now, break that down a little bit. We're at 48% of those cost savings are from efficiency. We have 31% natural gas savings from our geothermal. And then we have 21% from electricity generation from solar panels. Now, in addition to that, in 2022, Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act. This is a historic climate change bill where they hope to reduce the United States carbon emissions. This is done through almost $400 billion of funding. Now, we don't get all that. We get a small portion of that. And this comes in the form of 30% rebates on our projects. From our proposed projects, we estimate that we can get $8 million, dropping our actual cost down further to $10.1 million. Now, the government also gives us more money. These come in the form of tax credits. Now, these tax credits were formerly unavailable to nonprofits like Calvin, but now through the Inflation Reduction Act, they are now becoming available. So, from all these tax credits combined, we estimate that we can get about $2.6 million over these next 7 years until carbon neutrality. In addition to the government, there's also the private companies. These private companies like Patagonia, ClimateWorks, MacArthur, and more, they also provide grants. Now, these are competitive grants, so we don't necessarily get them every time, but we can apply to them and win some of them. We estimate that if we apply to enough, we can get approximately $540,000. Now, when you combine that with the tax credits, that brings us all the way up to $3.1 million from these tax credits and grants. We're down to only $7 million that Calvin really has to pay. But where do we get this money from? We're going to take a look at donors, where Calvin gets a lot of their money from. Talking with Calvin's advancement division, those are the people who talk and coordinate with donors, they believe that we can get anywhere between $1 million to, on the high end, $3 million of donor funding per year. Now, we don't even need that much. We need about $1.28 million annually over the course of a 5-year fundraising cycle, which is standard for Calvin. This comes to about $6.4 million from our wonderful Calvin donors. Now, thanks to the donors, we only have $600,000 left to fund. So, we propose Sustainable Scholars. Sustainable Scholars would be a program in the form of a $15 per student per semester fee. Now, this is not as much as earlier proposed, dropped it down, but this would do a few things. One, it encourages buy-in from students. Students will be more interested in the problems of climate change, along with the proposed solutions at Calvin. Now, this also opens the door up to donors. Donors can come in and cover this fee for groups of students. We have groups like the Placer Creek Stewards, or maybe even the Engineering 333 class, that could have their fees covered by donors. Now, finally, the last thing it does is it does cover our last $600,000 of funding. So, let's take a step back. What year should Calvin University choose for our carbon neutrality date? In this plan, we have raised an estimated $23.7 million. Only 42% of that was from Calvin donors or students, and all of our projects are now implemented. These mean we are now net carbon neutral. Now, our cost savings from earlier, they continue on after carbon neutrality. We keep those going, and those are not nothing. They are $1.2 million annually that we are taking in savings. And that is after all of our yearly costs for offsets. Like the small sliver in David's pie earlier for offsets, that was only 1 year. We would have to pay that every single year afterwards. So we can now continue to pay that straight out of our savings. So that takes into account, offsets, depreciation, operations, and maintenance. So we're making money. Now, it's aggressive, but it is possible to move our carbon neutrality target date to 2030. And it's a good thing too, right? Because if we didn't make any changes, if the world kept going on as usual, we would hit the 1.5 degrees projected increase by 2030. And Calvin has an opportunity to lead other universities and colleges by moving our date forward. We can improve our shared future but it is imperative that we act soon. So, what should our next steps be? Panache is going to look at this next.
Now that we know what it's going to take for us to get to carbon neutrality, let's think about what we can start doing right now. So during his time at Calvin University, President Leroy commissioned a study, and from that study, we got some goals and recommendations. One of those recommendations is to appoint a director of sustainability that will work within the cabinet to make sure all these initiatives become fruitful. Roles that are associated with this position will include maintaining sustainable strategies through communication between the cabinet and the rest of the Calvin community. Another role that they will have, will be collecting data and making sure that all the energy-associated data points are regularly updated and communicated with the rest of the community. Their final job, obviously, will be to spearhead the production of all these Calvin initiatives and to make sure that what we've suggested up here and anything else that students or other faculty members come up with are actually get to the point where they can see the light of day and are implemented. This is the existing administrative structure as far as sustainability initiatives are concerned. And what we are proposing is for this appointed Director of Sustainability to sit on the cabinet. That way they're close enough to those who can affect change and are acting also as a bridge between the rest of the faculty and student body. Our goal is for us to get to the point where we can then include an integrated carbon and energy master plan. I know we're all familiar with the existing Calvin University master plan, but that has to do more with facilities and buildings. This one, however, will ensure that as Calvin continues to grow, sustainability is not forgotten or left behind, and that 2030 date isn't just a date that engineering students came up with, but actually comes to light. I will now invite David Harris to give some acknowledgments.
At this point, not only the presenters, but the entire Engineering 333 class would like to acknowledge the individuals that made this project possible. First, we would like to acknowledge President Bohr, as he authored the original question that put forth our project, and he made the project possible. Next, I would like to thank the individuals who we affectionately call the back row people: Dirk Pruis, Greg Elzinga, Brent Hogewin, Trent DeBoer, and Toby Delasanta, as they sat through numerous in-class presentations along with President Bohr, giving us valuable feedback and insight into our project. Next is a list of all of the individuals who have made this project possible. Without their help, we could not have gotten nearly as far as we have without their insight and wisdom. As a class, I would like to pay a special thanks to our professor, Professor Hune, as he has worked tirelessly not only with us presenters, but with every single individual in the class. Can we please give everyone a round of applause? At this point, I will open the floor for questions regarding the project or the presentation. Thank you all for coming.
All right, I guess I get to come back to the podium to MC the Q&A session while the students, presenters, and their classmates will be ready to answer questions. So we have a few minutes. Any questions from the audience would be greatly appreciated. Okay, I see one in the middle back there. Go ahead, please.
In the future, do you think either with the savings we'll accumulate, would we be able to lower the need for carbon offsets so we can push even further carbon removal?
That's a great question. This is not me doing the whatever's happening there. The question was, will we be able to reduce the need to purchase carbon offsets as things go forward? Is that correct? Yeah, great. Who would like to take that? David, yes.
I can take that. So yes, that is a possibility with the carbon savings, but currently our project proposal covers until carbon neutrality, so that was not covered as part of our project scope.
And what happens when the grid decarbonizes? Is that...
When the grid decarbonizes, we will no longer have to purchase from the Consumers Energy Green Credit Program, as the grid will be fully 100% carbon-free.
And that electric grid is actually running all the heating systems at that point,
Correct.
Right? Because we've got geothermal heat pumps in place. Yeah, good. Okay, I think I saw another hand in this space here. Yes. Okay, so the question is, what's the you mean the buyback rate or the payback rate for? Yeah. Yeah, but we don't have a projector. We might have a slide, but we don't have a projector.
The
so.
payback time for the Calvin Solar Farm would be 14 years, and we had a projected 7% ROI after inflation.
Okay, I saw another question in the back. Yes, please.
Were there any sustainability capital projects that you considered and then rejected?
Okay, yeah, so the question is, were there any projects that were considered but rejected and then sort of left on the cutting room floor before the presentation was put together? Stuart? Yeah.
Countless. I mean, to put it short, there was a lot of stuff that's not shown here that failed, that didn't end up working out, cost too much money, or just implications with stuff didn't work. For example, from the heating team, we looked at electric boilers. We found the biggest electric boilers that we possibly could. It was pushing about 250 of them we would still need to heat Calvin's campus. That's just too many boilers. We don't have space for that. So that was one thing. We looked at air source heat pumps. They aren't as good in the winter months. They're very expensive. And so that's, very, very long payback. And that's why we went with the offsets to kind of cover the last remaining natural gas emissions for heating. Does anyone else want to talk about some of projects that didn't see the day of light?
So for the electricity team, we also considered out-of-box solutions as creating off-site energy farms, such as an entire off-site energy farm that would cover Calvin's yearly consumption, or an entire off-site wind farm, both of which were prohibitively expensive and required us to become an energy producer.
Where would they be located exactly?
We determined that these would both be located in West Texas, which was due to insolation rates, wind rates, and low cost of land.
Can I mention a couple other ideas?
Go for it.
What's that? Yeah, okay. So do you want to mention that? Go ahead. Okay. So there, you'll notice that in the funding section, there were a couple, there was a bunch of donor funding that needed to be covered and student fees and stuff like that. There's actually a lot of options for that. One of the options that is a good idea but didn't get here is alumni offset. So if an alum has a solar system on their house, they can keep operating it there, but they could donate the carbon benefit of that to Calvin. So and then we could aggregate all those together in a system, and then get it that way. So it'd be a way to assist Calvin without having paying Calvin. We'll just pay it in terms of the carbon offsets. There was something about something in the nature preserve. Remember that one?
Yeah, I mean, the nuclear submarine, they're getting decommissioned. So I think we could then take the reactor from that, put it in the nature preserve, and really just power all our Grand Rapids at that point. But it's kind of hard to get nuclear grade military uranium. So.
There another idea, and I see another hand there in just a second, but one other idea was to fund, say, the solar or parts of the geothermal system from the endowment. So we could take money from the endowment, and then with the savings, we pay back the endowment. And that rate of return was on the order of 7.5%, I think, was for some pieces of it, which is not much lower than we expect in the market, but it would be much less volatile than the market as well. So we'd be self-investing ourselves.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, there's also impact investing, where we could take one of our donors who has money that maybe they wouldn't donate, but they're willing to invest. And they would buy our solar panels, and then we could then sell back that electricity to them. We could give them that money, and they'd make their money back over that 14-year period, and we're happy, and they're happy.
Yep. Okay, I noticed Professor Muller, but there's a student back there. I want to get the student questions first, if that's okay, because students are always first here at Calvin. Please, go ahead. All right, so the question is, what's the lifespan of solar panels, and was that included in the plan that was set forward here?
So before I cover that, I want to be more general. Lifespan was included for all of our projects, but for solar specifically, it is currently estimated at 25 years. But as technology has advanced rapidly, they could see that being pushed to 30 years for current solar panels.
Okay, any other student questions? All right, then we got Professor Molnar. Go ahead.
Very nice presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
2030, we don't want to wait and do everything at 2030 because by then it's already up. But what I heard you talking about sounds like this will come into place, that will come into place gradually through the years. And I wonder if you have any thought of how far are we going to be along as a function of time between now and 2030? Is that what we're looking at?
Well, we happen to have a great graph primed for you.
Because starting right now is very essential to being useful by 2030. Excellent.
Yeah. And one thing to notice is a lot of the efficiency improvements are very early on, and that's because although they don't reduce that much carbon, they are highly effective at making money. That's where we got $5.6 million, and we only spent, I don't think it's more than $3 million on those efficiency products. How much?
1.9.
1.9, and we made 5.6 in 7 years.
Okay, maybe we have time for one more question. I see another professor question, but if there's a student question, we're going to do that one. Yes, please. So the question is, was there a proposed solution that did not involve buying carbon credits?
Well, in general, due to the scope that we assessed, with our other carbon emissions and our travel carbon emissions, there would not be other solutions. If we chose to consider a narrower scope, we have considered just purely doing projects and not carbon offsets.
Yeah, kind of to add on that, it's very hard to get those additional carbon emissions net free. Some aren't really even feasible, and that was kind of the determining factor. We wanted to try to get as much of the pie chart filled with actual projects, but ultimately, pretty much every way you look at it, you have to get a little bit of carbon offsets at the end there to finish off the neutrality.
And actually, oh, go ahead, please, Panache.
There was a proposal for Calvin to go entirely online, which again goes into it's not feasible, but that's how you're going to get rid of some of the travel emissions associated with you coming to campus or traveling to represent the school.
Yeah. And by online, you mean like classes?
Yeah, entirely. Like you
online.
go home, you're no campus anymore.
Like, remember what it was like during the pandemic? That.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah. Good. Okay, I said we'd have only one more, but I do see Professor Van Antwerp's question in the back, so we will humor him and let him ask the question. Please.
Thank you, you're very generous.
Yes, I know.
So this is an aggressive timeline. Are there cash flow issues associated with it?
So the question is, this is an aggressive timeline. Are there cash flow issues? That is, would we need to spend more money than we take in, that we have credit for in terms of savings, or like the IRA money that's coming in, for example?
Yeah, you want to pull up the cash flow graph?
Yeah.
Yeah, so cash flow was taken into account on this. And really what it comes down to is we're not that close to running out of money because we're still on the very low end of donor funding. We're on a very low student carbon tax of only $15 a semester. And we were able to really just lower those down. So we have room to spare in that.
All right, I think we need to declare victory at this point. I want to say thanks again to all the presenters. Great work, and thank you to President Boer for your assistance throughout the semester.
Would all the engineering students come up? Let all the 333. All right. And she could be your client for the next project.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
That would be pretty cool.
That'd be awesome. Yep, 333 students up here. President Boer wants a photo.
So where's our photographer?
Oh, I saw him around right there. Right
Oh,
there.
he's there. Okay.
You ready to get us?